the eyeshadow is eyeshadowing. The makeup is makeupping. Makeup interlude for ya. Hey there poetry pals, welcome back to another video. This week I'll be reviewing Drake's debut poetry collection, Titles Ruin Everything, A Stream of Consciousness. That's right, Drake released a poetry book and I'm going to tell you how I think about it. Here's how this video is going to work. I'm going to give you a bit of context. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the authors, a bit about the publisher, and a bit about the book itself. Then we're going to get into it. We'll discuss the themes and structure, first impressions, before diving into the poems themselves and examining their forms. I will give you my recommended reading experiences like I do with every book review, and I will recommend some other books that you should read. But before we go any further, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. The engagement really helps small creators like me get found. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by buying me a coffee on Ko-fi or joining me on Patreon, and the links to do that are in the description down below. You know how you can also support me with your money? I have a poetry book. It probably hasn't sold as many copies as Drake's, but I would argue it's a better poetry book than Drake's. Controversial yet brave. And you can buy that through the link in my description as well. And while we're at it, why don't you follow me on social media? I am at Josie Alford Poet on all of the things. Aubrey Drake Graham is a cultural phenomenon, a record-breaking musician, a style icon, a creative entrepreneur, and an actor. I am aware of Drake for his total domination of pop culture, especially in the last 5 years. Hotline Bling was pretty inescapable, and obviously it produced this meme. I wouldn't exactly call myself a fan, but here are some facts I learnt about him from a quick Goog before writing this video. Number 1. He first found fame at 15 as an actor in the teen drama Degrassi: The Next Generation. Number 2. GQ wrote an article about him just because he was wearing what looked like yassified Ugg boots. Number 3. He was the one who was texting Millie Bobby Brown advice about boys when she was 14 and he was 31. And number 4. Vox described him as a lovable fuckboy. But Drake was not the only writer. Kenza Samir co-wrote this with him, and she's collaborated with Drake on a number of his songs, including one of the ones on the soundtrack of Euphoria. But that is pretty much all I can find out about her, other than the fact that the meaww.com or meaw.com called her a poetess, and that kind of made me throw up in my mouth a little. To be clear, I don't think that that is a title that she's given herself. I think it's a title that that website gave to her. And if you're wondering why it made me throw up in my mouth, we're just poets. There's a reason why my Instagram account is called Josie Alford Poet and not Josie Alford Poetess. Stop trying to gender everything. You don't need to. Okay, so let's talk about the publisher. Phaidon is the premier global publisher of the creative arts. Can you tell I got this from their website? They work with the most influential authors to produce innovative books on art, photography, and design, architecture, fashion, food, travel, and illustrated books for children. Phaidon has a long and distinguished history as an art book publisher, with over 1,500 titles in print. In 2023, Phaidon celebrates its 100th anniversary. Happy birthday! Basically, this publisher makes the sort of books you want on your coffee table to show off. It's the sort of thing that you find in art gallery gift shops. They are aesthetically pleasing and expensive. Which brings me on to the book. This is his first book. It is called Titles Ruin Everything, A Stream of Consciousness. And this is from the website. It is a collection of never-before-published poems written together with his longtime friend Kenza Samir. Flowing across 168 pages, the provocative musings translate Graham's wit and talent for wordplay into potent stanzas. Together, these meditations on fame, romance, and relationships offer an unfiltered view of the artist's inner world. In releasing this, Drake becomes a part of a tradition of hip-hop artists who have released poetry books, including Jill Scott, Alicia Keys, and Tupac, whose poetry was published posthumously. Not to mention, musicians from multiple genres have published their own poetry, such as Lana Del Rey, Florence Welch, and Leonard Cohen, and loads more. This book came out really recently and sold out basically immediately. I ended up having to buy this book from a luxury clothing and lifestyle brand called End. With postage, I paid £20 for it, but the recommended retail price is $14.95. And the first person to buy me a coffee or two, or join me on Patreon and drop me a message saying you want it, and I'll just send you my copy. If you're already a Patreon, just drop me a message if you want this and I'll send it to you. It's 168 pages long and takes just 5 minutes to read. Why? Because there's only 1 or 2 lines of text on each page. So let's talk first impressions. This is the book. The title and the names actually go across the cover of the book, the full spread. So when you're looking at just the front, it says Everything Shusness by Brie Graham. So that's what the book looks like. I actually don't mind the layout of the cover. I think it's kind of interesting, and it definitely fits into that, into the sort of arty aesthetic of Phaidon Publishers. That sort of like coffee table, would find this in an art gallery sort of thing. Very sort of in fitting with that. I'll be honest, at first I hated the title because as a title enthusiast, I felt called out. I think the titles that people choose for their poems or their collections are telling and interesting. However, having thought about it, I actually kind of like the title, Titles Ruin Everything. I kind of like it. It is the right amount of mysterious and a teeny weeny bit pretentious. However, I do have an issue with the stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness writing is normally defined by huge chunks of text, often not punctuated, long and flowing prose. In contrast, Drake's poetry is minimalist and sparse. That's what it looks like on the page. Now, when I showed the book to my friend Malika Kagodi, and she said she kind of likes streams of consciousness. Imagine having just one thought and then loads of blank space. And I have to say, it does make sense when you think about it that way. Also, on your first flick through the book, your first thought is, what a waste of paper. This is literally the whole poetry collection. It's the line equivalent of about 12 sonnets. It's barely a pamphlet. Look at all that white space. Mal and I agreed that if you're going to keep each line on a separate page, at least make the book smaller. You know, like those novelty gift books where you like Wisdom of Dolly Parton and it's only really small. Also, inside the front cover is a black and white photo of some dogs, and the text says for the dogs, and there's a QR code which takes you to a page on Drake's website that all it says is, I made an album to go with the book. They say they miss the old Drake, girl don't tempt me, for all the dogs. So I guess we've got a new Drake album coming. So let's talk about the structure of this actual collection. The collection has no discernible journey. I'm not looking for a narrative, but at least some kind of thematic structure would have been nice. To be honest, the order of this feels random. But speaking of themes, the collection covers the themes of fame, romantic relationships, hard work, heartbreak, and to be honest, misogyny. So, kind of like his music. The poems themselves, I would argue, are not poems. They are just lines. Some of them are very good lines that could one day become poems or raps or pieces or whatever he calls them. The whole book just smacks of a poet's notes app. If you're a poet, you know what I mean. Like when you're out and about and you might get like an idea for somewhere, or you know, a line just pops into your head, so you have to write it down, and you either use your notes app or a notebook that you carry everywhere with you. It's kind of like that. You plan one day to come back to them and work on these lines and turn them into poems, and I'm sure one day you will. But at any given time, a poet's notes app or scrap notebook will look like a grave of almost poems. And that is what I feel like is happening here. With the idea that this album is coming out, I can't help thinking that these are actually going to be like snippets of lyrics from upcoming tracks in his album. I hope that's the case, because some of these ideas are cool, and it would be cool to have an actual poem about these ideas and not just like 1 or 2 lines. Now, having said that, let me talk to you about my favourite poems. My favourite poems are "Swimming in regret is not cardio," and "No one is gaslighting you. You are just so toxic that you're flammable." Admittedly, nothing super complex, but those were the ones that made me go, yes. And I feel like if you read them in front of a Bristol spoken word audience, you'd get a couple of clicks. Having said that, there are my least favourites. There are 2 types of women in this world: women who like giving head and women who I don't like. It's gross, it smacks of misogyny, there's quite a few misogynistic little lines in there that I don't like. But let me tell you about how I would recommend reading this book, and there is a perfect place. This is an excellent toilet book, and to be clear, I do not think that that is a bad thing. This is something that you can leave on your toilet if your guests who come to visit need to poop. They might see that and go, "Oh, that looks kind of interesting, let me flick through that." And also, you can literally read it in 5 to 10 minutes. So I think it's the perfect poop companion. And again, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. Like, I genuinely didn't hate the experience of reading this book. You can read it very quickly. That's all I'm saying. So pair with your morning poop is what I'm saying. If you're interested in reading this book, you would also be interested in reading these books. Go and check them out. So, in conclusion, this book is fine. I wouldn't necessarily call these poems, more a collection of potentially fire lines in a Drake song. Having said that, some of them suit being on the page, and he clearly makes use of the double page spread to create effect. Sort of 1/2 here, 1/2 here. If you like Drake's lyrics, you might like this. However, I don't like Drake's lyrics, and I don't like this. I'm not sure it's worth £15, and not that you can buy it anywhere, because it's sold out at a bunch of places. If you do want to read it, as I said earlier, the first person to buy me a coffee or one of my patrons to message me, a coffee or 2 by the way, this did cost me 20 quid. First person to message me saying I want it, and I'll post it to you. Let me know. Here's what I want to hear from you guys. Have you read this book? And if so, what did you think? And what is your favourite Drake song? And who do you think I should review next? I mean, there is a whole world of like musician and celebrity poetry that I haven't even tapped in on yet. Who do you think I should review next? Let me know in the comments. So that's it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications and share it with your friends. The engagement really helps small creators like me get found, and you'd just be really supporting me. If you want to support me with your money, which would be lovely, you can buy me a coffee, join me on Patreon, or buy a copy of my book. The links to do all of that are in the description down below. And while we're on the subject, why don't you follow me on social media? I am at Josie Alford Poet on all of the things. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all next week. Bye!